Everything is. So, I thought that I might have talked about this a month or so ago in a conversation, but I hadn't. And it's probably a good thing in a way because I just recently put it into practice, even though I had like the mental epiphany, if you want to call it that, a month to 2 months ago. And I probably put it in a vlog and didn't have a full conversation about it, and it's really odd. I don't know why, but maybe it's because it didn't seem as significant because I didn't put it into practice until very recently, like the last couple days. And yeah, I guess I'll start with just like where that idea came from. Everything is, and so meditation is something I have attempted for years, and I can probably count on two hands how many times I've even attempted it royally. Other than there have been like probably around the same amount of I think I've probably attempted meditation like under 10 times, and then there's been like a little bit under 10 times where I've done that in nature, which has been different for me. It's much easier to do for me in certain places. When I'm mountain biking, there are certain natural stops. But one of my meditation kind of mantras or whatever, they're the only one I guess I came up with was everything is okay. And part of that was just like really tied to anxiety, which would be like the main reason for me to meditate in the first place. And just thinking everything is okay. Everything is okay. Like right now, everything is fine. We're not thinking about feelings from a couple hours or days or months or years ago. We're not projecting into the future about what's going to happen in a couple hours, weeks, months, years. It's right now, everything is okay. That's what I would try to focus on. But I would try to breathe in or out, doesn't matter, with one word, and then the next, and then the next, which is like three different breaths. And I found that I was like saying everything is, and because I had to think of like a third, I don't know, like another word, like okay, I would miss it sometimes. Like I would just be like everything is everything, and then I'd be like oh, and I was like breaking my like concentration almost, and like getting upset with myself for the fact that I said everything is everything, not everything is okay. And this is just a couple months ago when I just realized, like, wait a second, but I could just shorten it. Everything is. Period. Everything is. That's it. Like, that was it. It was this massive epiphany, but I haven't really put it into practice until recently. So, for me, what that means, everything is just that everything that exists, exists, and it just is. And don't think about what if, what if, it's just like, no, this is right now. Like, right now, not thinking, well, what if people actually not, I shouldn't say don't think what if. It's an example. It's like everything is, like, this is happening right now and it sucks, is different than this is what's happening now, period. Like, this is what's happening and I can't believe this is happening because people need to do their jobs better and look what you did and now it screwed things up for me so bad and what the heck and blah, 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 blah. Like, there are so many things and hoops that I have to jump through constantly for different reasons, whether it be medical stuff or just government stuff for other reasons, or like work related things, or just relying on people in general, and just people aren't very efficient or organized or whatever. That it ends up feeling very personal when things happen or don't happen and they're supposed to, and I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, because it negatively impacts me sometimes to such a degree. So those are things I deal with like very, very frequently. But the only thing I can change is me and my attitude and how I respond to things, which is very much a Viktor Frankl type thing. Victor with a K. Um, and that's he wrote a book called A Man's Search for Meaning, and it's very short. I had to read it in university for a class. I can't remember what class, but he talks about, and Harold S. Kushner wrote, I think, the introduction or the preface um, in that edition before the text actually begins in earnest. And there's some quotes I got from him too, but basically it was just like there are times where you cannot do anything. You have no control, and you still have control over how you react to the situation. And so, and in the context of Viktor Frankl was Frankel. I'm just going to spell the whole thing. Viktor, Victor, and then Frankel is in Frank, Frankl. But he was a doctor, psychologist, or psychiatrist. I don't know. But he was in concentration camps. And he just talked about how you have no control over anything you do ever at all. You don't control when you get to go to the bathroom, when you get to eat. You know what I mean? Like, I guess you could control whether or not you live if you want to die by suicide, if you want whatever, right? But you maintain the control of how you will react to the actions that are even put upon you. And I've had that in my head for years and years and years and years and years. But again, not putting things into practice. I could have a great idea and understand it intellectually, but it's not fully understood because I have not been experiencing it and living it. So I can't remember why I brought that up, but everything just is. It's happening, or it happened just now, and that's just what happened, and that's it. Let's not spend any more time or energy thinking about what could have been different or engaging in something. And I'm going to give you some examples. So that's just kind of how I arrived at this. But recently, I've been able to put that into practice a couple times. So a week to 2 weeks ago, I was leaving the studio, and so I very frequently park in the mall parking lot, walk over to the studio when I'm here, depending on the hours I'm here. If it's Monday through Friday during the hours of 8 to 5, then that's what I'll do because I don't want to pay for parking and I don't want to risk getting a ticket. So I very frequently have to stand and wait for a light so I can cross. I don't have to, I guess. I could just jaywalk or go further down or whatever, but I choose to be at the crosswalk and wait for the walk light and go. And I found that even though I've already known that this city has some incredibly terrible drivers, a lot of people don't turn right on a red, and it's like, it's yours, you take it. Like, you stop, you come to a complete stop, you look both ways, and you shoulder check, and you can turn right. Like, if you have the right of way, right? There's no reason you can't. And sometimes, I'm standing there, and I don't stand right at the edge of the sidewalk or anything. Like, I make I'm very purposeful about taking a few steps back, and there's 20 seconds left on the walk light. So I shouldn't say the other direction has 20 seconds left, and you can see that, so you know my walk light's not going to come on for a while because the other direction, whatever. And people will just sit there the whole time. They'll sit there until they get a green light. And I'm like, you have the right of way, just turn right. What are you doing? And there was this one time where I was crossing the street, like I said, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago or something. But I went and I was there at the corner and I was waiting. It was a red light and it wasn't my turn yet. And someone, I had to walk by them. They had pulled up as I was kind of walking across the street. And then I stood on the corner and I was waiting. And they were waiting and they didn't do anything. I'm like, you're signaling right and you're in the right lane. Just turn right. And they waited for a bit and then they looked to their left. And my walk light came on. They had just waited so long that it was my turn to go. But they didn't look back right before they turned right. So they almost hit me because I was like, hey, my walk light's on. I'm going now. Who knows when you're going to go? You've been sitting there for 45 seconds twiddling your thumbs and you could have gone. So it's funny because I'm still getting worked up about it because I find that stuff really frustrating still. So obviously I've still got work to do, but I'm arriving at the point. They swerved around me kind of or stopped or whatever, and they honked at me, and then they didn't even, and I turned around and I was like this close to their vehicle and I was just like this, but they didn't even look at me. They just swerved around and sped off, but then they went into the parking lot. Well, that's where I was headed to, and it was this, I don't know, person, maybe their 60s, and they were close to where my vehicle was parked. And they were still in their vehicle, they hadn't gotten out yet and whatever. And so I waited there, and I was like, what's the problem? And they were like, well, it wasn't your turn to walk yet and whatever. And I was like, yes, it was. And you might find that arguing is pointless in this whole thing, but that's what I'm getting to. So, I was just like, yeah, you were looking the other way. You had a red light. You could have gone any time. You looked the other way, and then the walk light turned on, and then I went. And they basically accused me of jaywalking without saying those words. And it was just like, that's not what happened. But he was getting closer to me in physical proximity as well. And then some rando just came in their like convertible, because we're in the parking lot, right? Like, oh, hey boys, like everything's okay, everyone's alive. Like they didn't know anything that had happened. Or like everyone's fine, like chill out, like peace and love, boys. And I was turned to them, and I was just like, you don't even know what just happened. Like, I can't educate somebody on whatever so they don't make the same mistake again. And then the dude kind of just like walked away, and I was like, that's probably for the best. But I was like so upset at both parties, and I was just really, really worked up. And I was just like, what was the point of this? Like, and I didn't know what to do with it. Maybe this was like 3 weeks ago, and then last week I went to counseling, and I was discussing other things that were more personal that I'm not going to air out here, but I was just discussing my relationships with others, and like, well, a specific other, and that turned into like not engaging in a certain way, and how I realized I could apply that to just everything and my whole life and any person I engage with. And I went back to this example, and I was like, this caused me a lot of grief. And I was just thinking, like, oh, if my real purpose was to educate somebody so they're not making the same mistake again, because a lot of times I get so upset, or just like, hey, I could have died right there, or you could have hit the dog or a kid, or just it was unsafe or whatever. And so it's like, hey, can we educate people? But like, you don't know if you can or not. It's like there's no point in attempting to educate someone unless you have a conversation with them first and you find them to be receptive. Otherwise, there's no point. And if there's no real room to have that conversation, then don't attempt to educate, I would say. Unless, like very quickly, like educate in a way. Okay, so I'll go back to this in a second. But it was like 4 or 5 days ago. I was leaving the studio, and there was a person walking across because they had a walk light, and there was a van, and they were like stopped in the middle of the road. They were going really slow, and they had to kind of come to a stop. They had a red light, like they had a red light forever. Like it wasn't like they blew through a red. Like no, it was like red when they were a block away still. But they didn't even look at the light, and they were slowing down because there was somebody walking, and they're like, oh man, this person's like jaywalking or whatever, and I gotta wait for this person. And they were in the middle of the intersection. I just yelled. I was just like, it's a red light, like really loud. And they heard me because their windows were down. Or maybe I said, the light's red. And like, they didn't go backwards because they were just like too far gone. Like they just went forwards. But I was like, in that moment, I was like, okay, I just said it and now I can just be done with it. But it's like a moment of like, it's not about you are wrong. That's not the purpose, because that makes me feel better. It's like, you are wrong, and you need to check yourself and look up and realize, oh shoot, I wasn't paying attention. I need to do better. I got worked up for nothing, but also someone could get hurt. To me, that's what that is. It's never just like, you're wrong, haha, I feel better about myself now by putting you down or pointing out that you did a thing. It's like, you're wrong, do better. Acknowledge you are wrong so you can do better. Because I don't realize everything that I do. I don't know all the wrongs that I do. Like someone sometimes has to point out, like, hey, when you did that thing that hurt my feelings, and I'm like, oh snap, I didn't realize that. I need to change my tone or how I speak or whatever, because that wasn't my intention, and you've pointed this out to me, and now I can fix that. Obviously, it doesn't go that smoothly all the time, but that is my goal. So I was just thinking about that incident with this gentleman who almost hit me and then was upset about it and then accused me of jaywalking. And I was just thinking, like, okay, well, what if I were to approach him with calm and just be like, hey, I know you probably didn't do it on purpose. Because then there's that whole thing of, like, never attribute to malice what you can attribute to incompetence. And so it's like, hey, I know that you probably didn't do that on purpose. Like, I realize that, but I just want to let you know, like, I almost got hit. Like, I had a walk light, but you were looking the other direction. You didn't realize I had it. You waited for a long time. And then you didn't look right again before you turned, and just wanted, just whatever. It's fine, we're good, but like just so that you can keep an eye on that in the future. And I was like, some people might respond better to that approach, for sure. But that guy still might have just told me to go fly a kite. And I thought, I don't think I would ever be in a position where like I can try that thing, I can try, and it doesn't feel like a facade. Like I'm trying to just be calm or whatever. But what I'm not expecting is that the reaction to that would still be negative and just be like anger, aggression, a defensiveness, and I would get upset. And I know like where I'm at, I'm like it would be really hard to try that other approach. I really don't think I can even do it right now, but especially because I can anticipate what I shouldn't do because what's in the future. But whatever, there's times to anticipate and times not to. That anticipation doesn't give me anxiety. In fact, it's probably that's what anxiety is sometimes, is like a life-saving mechanism, self-preservation mechanism. So anyway, I just thought, well, if that person didn't respond positively, that would really make me upset. Just cut out the middleman and don't engage, right? Like I don't like confrontation, but I was really upset at that thing that happened, so I chose to engage. And it just did nothing for me. It did nothing positive whatsoever, except leading to this example and this realization that I just don't engage. Just don't engage. Everything is. And it became this thing of like, he didn't hit me. But my mind immediately goes to, but he could have. He almost did. I could have been hurt, like whatever. But he didn't. So why go to this thing that could have happened in that scenario? Because in that scenario, there's nothing that the only thing I could learn from is never walking across the street in case somebody doesn't know how to drive. Like defensive driving or just being self-preservation, whatever. Yeah, I wasn't. But I made sure the street was clear, the light was on, everything. I was doing everything. But as you know from just driving a vehicle, just because you're doing everything doesn't ensure your safety whatsoever, because tons of people do stupid stuff in vehicles. And so you are always just looking, shoulder checking, whatever, judging like that's a red light, but someone might blow through it, and like that person's going really fast. I don't think they're going to stop in time, whatever, right? You're making all those like judgments very quick, perceptive designations to all these different things that are happening constantly while you drive. And I'm just thinking like, yeah, I can change something about what I do when I cross the street, I guess, but at the same time, I can't prevent everything. Because then it goes to the part of like, we'll just never leave the house then, right? Of like, hey, well, I did what I could, but like, anyway, within reason. So for me, there wasn't much to learn there in that one experience. And so it ends up being let go. It's like, hey, that person, I'm not going to engage them. There's no point in attempting to educate them or be upset at them or express my grievances for whatever purpose, because nothing positive comes out of that. So don't engage in that circumstance. There's no point in engaging. Be like, oh, okay, I can acknowledge, like, man, that guy almost hit me, or I can get frustrated, I can get upset, and just be like, man, what the heck? Like, they didn't go and whatever, and then I just have to let it go really quickly and be like, hey, everything is okay right now, or just everything is. Everything just is. Like the thing that happened was, it happened, and that's it. And if he hit me, then that would be like, okay, he hit me. Like, what the hell? And just like, that would cause a lot more. It would be a bigger barrier for me to get to. I'm not at that stage, like where I can let go of that as quickly. Like I would probably be incredibly angry and whatever, and I'd want repercussions and justice and whatever. But it's because I'm not at the place where I'm like, yeah, if he hit me with his car, I would be like, hey, everything is. I just got hit. It's what happens, man. But I understand that now because it did happen. Okay, like we just need to go through what we need to go through, but we can do that without anger. We can do that without this, like, without the anxiety, without the like, just extreme feeling of stress and anger and hatred, and just like without that, it can be like, man, like that wasn't okay, and that dude sucks, and this is where I'm at though. Like acknowledge right now, acknowledge that happened. I'm here. That's it. Now what? And that's another thing that I've thought about that for a long time. Like, hey, this happened. Now what? For like over a year, and that came kind of from just like different counseling and like a book that they had me read. And it was like, hey, you like diffusion tactics of like just acknowledge, stepping away, like one step away from the emotion or feeling or whatever. Feelings and emotions are different, but I can't remember the definition of how they're different. But acknowledging, like, hey, this is how I'm feeling, and that make and like exploring that for a second, being curious about it. Like, hey, I feel this way. It makes sense to feel this way. Don't resist feeling that way. Feel it and be like, yeah, that makes sense. I'm feeling that. Of course I am, because this was really upsetting. And then for me, that tactic works a lot, and I can just kind of let go of it and be like, hey, that's another form of that is. This is the thing. Don't fight the thing. It just is. Because everything is. It just is what it is. It's going to sound something like Popeye stuff. I am what I am. Uh, and that's a side note. But that's interesting just how, like, I never watched Popeye, but it's just at that time frame when I was growing up, it was still in popular culture enough that people, other generations older than I, were speaking about it, so I know the reference point. But I never saw it, and I know what Popeye looks like. I don't remember the name of the. Was he wearing a red turtleneck and that black hair? I don't know. A love interest, I guess. That was my impression. Anyway, now we're talking about Popeye. Okay, so sorry, folks. So no filter today. Everything is. Everything is. So it's like, if I got hit by the car, I'd just be like, hey, that happened. Okay, now what? Just go into like, that happened, now what do we do? And start on the other thing. And I won't go through all the details, but I had a couple of appointments that I had to get to that were medical related, and they were important. And so it was Friday, and I left my home to get to my appointment, and I had a flat tire. Completely flat. Couldn't drive on it. I needed to change it. Didn't have enough time. I was going to miss my appointments. It was really frustrating because I tried to phone both of these places and be like, hey, like, one of them, I was like, I'm not going to make it in time, period. And just even trying to make that phone call and do what I was supposed to do, ugh, it was like a maple bug. I don't know what they're actually called. I just call them maple bugs, the little black and red ones. I don't like insects very much. In my space, they're fine, and they can do their job outside. They're not doing their job in here. They don't need to be here. They can do their job outside. Anyway, so flat tire. And it was really difficult. Like, I couldn't get through to the people to tell them that one of the appointments, I'm like, hey, I might be late. I don't know. This other one, I am not going to be there on time. What do I do? And it was just really frustrating, just with automated systems and whatever. And they're just like, let me tell you a little bit about it, because it's so frustrating. Like, one, for some places, they don't include a local number. It's like, if I wanted to call that physical location of that bank, I can't. I have to call a general number. I can't call that bank. It goes to a call center, and then someone's trying to help me. I'm like, no, but I need something from that bank, or like a clinic or whatever. And in this case, that's what one of them was. And so I had to go to like a general line, but then the automated system was picking up noises, and it thought that I was responding to that when I didn't even hear the options yet. Because normally it's like, oh, click 1 for the South Zone, or click 2 for this part of Alberta, or whatever. Or say it out loud. Like, tell us stuff that, like, you can tell me out loud, or like the numbers or whatever. Tell me what you're looking for. But I didn't even know that it was that type of automated response, because it didn't even get to tell me yet that it would allow me to speak. And I was trying to like fix my tire, so there were some background noises, and it was like, sorry, I didn't catch that. And then it said like, and then there was a second time where it was like, okay, I didn't quite catch that either. Like, thanks for calling, and hopefully it works out next time, was basically the sentiment. And then it hung up on me, and I was like, what? And I was about to lose my mind. I was just like so upset and anxious and frustrated about all this happening and all my plans derailing. And then like I called back, and then like I was like, hey, I'm just gonna stand here and not make noise, I guess, because I need to like put in the option of what I need. And then a car drove by, and it was like, sorry, I didn't catch that. And then something else happened. Like someone shut a door or something. And then it's like, oh, sorry, try again next time, and hung up. And I was like so ready to just lose it completely. And then I finally got a hold of somebody. They were rude, and then I tried to get a hold of someone else. And that, like, there were so many compounding things. But very quickly, I found I was able to let go of it and be like, hey, right now I'm doing everything I can do. It's not working. I'm not going to die. I'm not under threat of death right now. My anxiety doesn't need to kick in to help me to survive the situation. I'm fine. Like, I'm going to be late, and that appointment is going to have to get booked for some other time. And they might think whatever for like the next hour until I get there, that they think that I just missed the appointment. I called 20 minutes before I was going to miss it. So, and then I got to that appointment later, and they didn't care. Like, they just didn't. They didn't even know that I left a message because I had gotten there like 20 minutes late, but I was maybe a half hour late, and I was like, hey, like, I had an appointment at 2. I phoned at 1:40 saying, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I left a message. It says to only leave 1. No one answered the phone. And I explained myself, and then they were like, oh, okay. Like, they didn't care. In what I thought was a bad way. I'm like, was it you that was supposed to answer the messages or answer the phone or check the messages and didn't? And that's why you're just like, okay, whatever, sure, whatever. But, like, do better. Like, but anyway, it just became a thing with this situation just a few days ago, 2 days ago. I was just okay, but everything just is now. Like, it just is. This is what's happening. This is what is. What now? I fixed my tire. I went down there. I adjusted and made a new plan. I think when I feel more under threat of like when there's a more immediate threat, whatever that is, thinking on my feet and being like, what now happens very naturally for me. It's not an issue for me. But in a situation where my mind is telling me, you're really anxious and you need to act fast and you need to, like, this is bananas and whatever, but it's not actually happening, like, it's not really that is when the problem occurs, where I'm like, I get so frustrated at what's happening and I'm not focused on, like, okay, this happened. Like, it's like I need to, like, expel this energy of anxiety first, to be like, rant for 5 or 10 minutes and completely panic and just lose my whole head and just, like, get so worked up that then it brings me down because I've exerted all this energy, versus just, like, again, cutting out the middleman and just being like, okay, I'm not going to engage in that. I'm not going to engage in my own anxiety. It is. Everything is. This is. This is what happened. I'm frustrated that I got this flat tire because I drove, whatever. I live very near a construction type area where they're building some residential housing, and living in those areas or driving in those streets isn't good because this stuff happens. There's a bolt in my tire, and now that's $150 that I can't afford. I have a full spare, so it was like good. I was like, oh, I've got a full spare in my trunk. Like, let me just put that on. I can rock that for a while. I learned, and when I have $150 to get a new tire, I will, so that I continue to have this spare that I can use. But it's really unfortunate that these construction people aren't accountable and don't clean up their workspaces enough so that, you know, you're getting nails or screws or bolts or whatever, and then you're out money. And so it's like, okay, but that's just what it is. What am I going to change, right? Like, it's just not going to, it just is. And I don't mean to say that you can't do what you can to affect change, but you really have to evaluate, am I actually going to be successful? Is there a point in trying? Even if you're not successful, sometimes you need to do things in a protest situation, right? To let that voice be heard so that effective change can happen at some point. And sometimes I feel like, no, I just need to be heard, because if I'm not heard, then, like, I can't even move on, because I just need this thing to be acknowledged. But I can cut that out way more than I had before. I'm like, I don't need to. I don't need to say that. I don't need to know. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to just live.